Ex-soldier buys abandoned warehouse, but dog makes shocking $76 million discovery. Marcus Davis observed the peeling walls of the warehouse with a mix of hope and uncertainty. At 40 years old, he had invested his last savings in that deteriorated property, betting everything on a dream that seemed increasingly distant. The German Shepherd Duke had been insistently sniffing the same wall for 3 consecutive days, behavior that deeply puzzled his owner. The animal, trained during years of military service, had never shown such specific interest in something without apparent reason. "What is it, buddy?" murmured Marcus, running his hand over the head of the dog who whimpered softly while scratching the old bricks. The Thursday afternoon in Richmond was hot and stuffy. Marcus took off his beige cap and wiped his sweaty face with the sleeve of his green jacket. 3 weeks earlier, when he'd signed the purchase contract for that warehouse in the industrial zone, he imagined that within a month he'd have his tools organized and the first customers arriving. Reality proved quite different. The place was in worse condition than he'd imagined. Water damage in the walls, old electrical wiring, problematic plumbing. Each discovered problem consumed more of the scarce money that remained after the purchase. But giving up wasn't an option. After 15 years serving in the United States Army, being discharged due to a knee injury during routine training, that mechanic shop represented his only chance to start over. Duke continued his strange behavior, alternating between intense sniffing and scratching the bricks with his front paws. Marcus watched with growing attention. The animal had never acted this way before. During the years of service, Duke had been trained to detect explosives and suspicious substances. His instinct rarely failed. "There's something there, isn't there?" Marcus approached the wall, examining the bricks more carefully. The structure seemed solid at first glance, but some bricks had slightly different mortar than the rest. Marcus grabbed a screwdriver from the toolbox and gently poked the mortar around one of the bricks. The material gave way with suspicious ease. Marcus's heart accelerated. 15 years of military training had sharpened his instincts for unusual situations. That wall was hiding something, and Duke knew it even before he realized. With careful movements, Marcus removed the first brick. Behind it, he found an empty space. His fingers felt the cavity and found something wrapped in plastic. He pulled out the package and almost dropped it when he saw the dollar bills. "My God," he whispered, looking around to make sure he was alone. Duke wagged his tail, as if knowing he had completed an important mission. Marcus carefully unwrapped the package. They were old bills, some already yellowed with time, but genuine. He quickly counted $10,000. His pulse quickened even more. If there was one package, there could be others. Marcus removed the adjacent bricks with controlled urgency. The cavity was larger than he'd imagined. Inside, dozens of similar packages were stacked with military organization. It took 2 hours to remove all the packages and pile them on a tarp on the warehouse floor. The quantity was impressive. With hands trembling slightly, Marcus began to count. The total amount made his head spin. Exactly $76 million. Duke remained seated beside the pile of money, watching Marcus with those intelligent eyes that seemed to ask, "What now?" "What now indeed, buddy?" Marcus spoke softly, running his hand over the dog's head. "What now indeed?" The first reaction was euphoria. All financial problems solved in a second. The workshop could be completely renovated, equipped with the best tools, turned into the business of his dreams. It could even expand, hire employees, become a real company. But the euphoria lasted only a few minutes. Gradually, reality set in. That amount of money couldn't have a legal origin. No one hides $76 million in a wall by accident or through carelessness. That money belonged to someone, and probably to someone dangerous. Marcus got up and walked through the warehouse, trying to organize his thoughts. 15 years of military discipline didn't disappear overnight. There were protocols for situations like this, even if he had never imagined living through one. The first rule was not to make rash decisions. The second was to assess all risks. The third was to keep the situation under control until he had enough information to act. He carefully reorganized the money in the cavity and put the bricks back in place, leaving only a small mark to find the spot again. It wasn't safe to keep that fortune exposed, but it also wasn't safe to take it home. On the way back, driving his old F-150 on Interstate 95, Marcus tried to process what had happened. Duke was in the passenger seat, apparently satisfied to have completed his unofficial mission. At home, a small apartment in the Riverside district, Marcus searched the internet for the history of the property he had bought. The information was limited, but he discovered that the warehouse had belonged for 3 decades to the Mitchell family, owners of Mitchell Logistics, a logistics company that had gone bankrupt 5 years ago. The family business had been prosperous for decades, moving cargo between New York City and the interior. The bankruptcy was sudden and mysterious, leaving many debts and employees unpaid. The family had sold all their assets, including the warehouse, to pay off part of the debts. Marcus wrote down the names: Benjamin Mitchell, the family patriarch, and Sarah Mitchell, daughter and accountant of the company. According to news from the time, Sarah had been responsible for managing the liquidation of assets after the disappearance of her husband, Richard Thompson, who was the managing partner of the company. The name Richard Thompson appeared several times in the reports. Married to Sarah, father of 2 young children, he had disappeared around the same time as the bankruptcy, leaving the family without explanations. The coincidence was unsettling. Marcus spent the night awake, trying to connect the information. If the money belonged to the Mitchell family, it would be the result of years of honest work. If it belonged to Richard Thompson, it could be the fruit of illicit activities that caused the ruin of the family business. The next morning he returned to the warehouse with Duke. The animal ran directly to the wall, confirming that the discovery was real and not a strange dream. Marcus checked if the bricks were exactly as he had left them. They were. He decided to investigate further before making any decision. He located the Mitchell family's address through public records. Benjamin Mitchell, 72 years old, lived in a simple house in the Mill District, very different from the mansion he had owned during the prosperous era of the company. Marcus devised a plan to approach the family without raising suspicions. He would pretend to be interested in buying other properties in the area, a reasonable excuse for someone who had just acquired a warehouse there. The following Wednesday, he went to Benjamin Mitchell's address. The house was modest, well maintained, but with clear signs that the residents were facing financial difficulties. The iron gate was rusty, the exterior paint needed repairs, and an old Civic in the garage had several scratches and dents. Marcus rang the doorbell and was greeted by a tall, thin man with graying hair and tired eyes. His calloused hands indicated recent manual labor. "Good morning. Are you Benjamin Mitchell?" "Yes, I am. What can I do for you?" "My name is Marcus Davis. I recently purchased the warehouse that belonged to you in the industrial zone. I'm interested in other properties in the area and would like to discuss the history of the location." Benjamin's face tightened slightly upon hearing about the warehouse, but he invited Marcus inside. The room was simple and clean. Old but well-kept furniture, family photographs on the walls showing better times. Marcus noticed several pictures of a young woman with 2 small children. "Coffee?" Benjamin offered. "Please." While the elderly man prepared coffee in the kitchen, Marcus observed the photographs. One showed the complete family: Benjamin, a lady who must have been his wife, Sarah, with a man he assumed was Richard, and 2 children. Everyone looked happy. "My wife passed away 2 years ago," said Benjamin, returning with the coffee. "Heart problems. She couldn't handle the stress of losing the business." "I'm sorry. That must have been a very difficult time." Benjamin took a deep breath and sat in the armchair opposite. 30 years building that company. 30 years of honest work, sweat, sacrifice, and overnight everything vanished. What exactly happened? Richard, my daughter's husband. We trusted him like a son. He handled the finances, the big deals. One day he just disappeared, took everything he could and vanished into thin air. Benjamin's voice carried accumulated pain and anger. Marcus felt a tightness in his chest. "And your daughter? How is she doing?" "Sarah struggles as best she can. Works as a freelance accountant, takes weekend side jobs. I work as a night watchman at a security company to help with expenses. The children, poor things, don't understand why their father left." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. Marcus took a sip of coffee to hide his emotion. The story matched perfectly with what he had researched. Richard Thompson had stolen from his own family and hidden the money in the warehouse, planning to come back for it when things cooled down. Do you have any idea where Richard went? None. He simply disappeared. Left his family, his small children, without a word of explanation. Sarah came home and found only a note saying he needed to travel for work, never showed up again. And the company? What was left? Debts. Lots of debts. Richard had taken out loans using the company as collateral, had signed contracts nobody knew about. When everything came to light, we discovered the company had been bankrupt for months. Benjamin stood up and went to one of the photographs on the wall, an image of the company in its heyday. 28 trucks, 2 warehouses, an office in the central area. Jobs for 50 families, all that turned to dust overnight. The indignation in the elderly man's voice was palpable. Marcus understood perfectly. He had seen military colleagues betrayed by people they trusted. Family betrayal was even more painful. And today, how are things? Surviving. Sarah works hard, earns little. I do what I can at my age. The children go to public school, wear clothes donated by neighbors. It's not the life we wanted for them. The conversation continued for another hour. Benjamin talked about the company's early years, about how he had built the business with honesty and hard work. He spoke about his dream of leaving a worthy legacy for his daughter and grandchildren. When Marcus said goodbye, he promised to return soon to discuss other properties in the area. Benjamin thanked him for the visit, saying it was good to talk about the old days with someone who seemed to understand. On the way back, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility. That money belonged to the Mitchell family, there was no doubt. Richard Thompson had stolen from his own family and hidden the fortune, planning an escape that spanned 5 years. But how to return the money without implicating himself? Simply showing up at Benjamin's house with $76 million would raise suspicions about his own honesty. Moreover, there could be complex legal issues involving the discovery. Marcus needed a careful plan. He couldn't act on impulse, even though his intentions were honest. 15 years of military discipline had taught him that good intentions without proper planning resulted in disaster. That night, he drafted a preliminary strategy. First, he needed more information about the family's legal situation. Second, he needed to understand if there were other parties interested in the money, like creditors of the bankrupt company. Third, he needed to find a way to return the fortune without compromising anyone. The following week, he returned to Benjamin's house under the pretext of evaluating other properties. This time, he met Sarah, who arrived from work during his visit. Sarah Mitchell was 35 years old, with brown hair tied in a practical bun, dark eyes marked by fatigue. She wore a simple work outfit and carried a briefcase full of documents. Even tired, she greeted Marcus politely. "Dad told me you bought our old warehouse. How's the renovation going?" "Slowly but progressing. It's an ambitious project for my financial situation, but I believe it will work out." Sarah smiled for the first time. "We always had a special fondness for that place. It's where everything began. Dad bought the warehouse in the 80s, when the company was still small. Many good memories are tied to that place. And some bad ones too, I imagine." Sarah's smile faded. "Yes, some bad ones too. But I prefer to remember the good times." Marcus observed the interaction between father and daughter during the simple dinner that Benjamin insisted on sharing. The mutual love and constant worry about financial matters were evident. Sarah talked about difficult clients, tight deadlines, bills that needed to be paid. "And the children?" asked Marcus. "They're at the neighbor's house. Emily is 8 years old. Ryan is 6. They're good kids, but they miss their father." The pain in Sarah's voice was undeniable. Marcus realized she still carried deep wounds from the betrayal and abandonment. "Do they ask when Dad is coming back?" "At first they asked every day. Now, they rarely bring it up. Emily is smarter. She already understands that Dad isn't coming back." "Ryan still has hope," Benjamin intervened. "It's better they understand the reality soon. Richard isn't coming back, and even if he did, he wouldn't be welcome." The bitterness in the elderly man's voice was understandable, but Marcus noticed that Sarah still harbored confused feelings toward her ex-husband. "Did you try to look for him?" "At first, yes. I hired a private investigator, but it was too expensive and yielded no results. Later, I accepted that he had chosen to leave our lives." The conversation revealed the extent of the damage caused by Richard. It wasn't just about stolen money, but a destroyed family, shattered dreams, broken trust. Marcus said goodbye, promising to return soon. During the following days, he developed a more detailed plan. He needed to return the money in a way that the family could accept without suspicion, and he himself wouldn't be implicated. The solution came through a bold idea. He researched security companies that handle cases of forgotten or abandoned money. He discovered there is a legal protocol for situations where valuables are found in purchased properties, involving courts and waiting periods for potential owners to come forward. The process would be long and bureaucratic, but it would ensure everything was done legally. Marcus consulted an attorney, inventing a hypothetical situation about finding money in a purchased property. The attorney explained there's a specific procedure. The finder must report the discovery to the authorities, who begin a process to identify the rightful owner. If no one claims the money within a set period, it returns to the finder. Marcus decided to follow this path, even knowing it would be long and complex. Honesty would be worth more than the convenience of simply keeping the money or giving it informally to the family. But before starting the legal process, he wanted to better understand the family's current situation. He returned to Benjamin's house the following week, this time bringing Duke as company. "What a beautiful animal," Benjamin commented upon seeing the German shepherd. "Duke has been my companion since my army days, trained to detect dangerous substances. Now he's retired, but he still keeps some instincts." Benjamin crouched to pet the dog, who responded positively. "I've always liked dogs. We had one back when the company was running, a mixed breed named Thunder. The children loved him." "What happened to the dog?" "He died of old age a year before the bankruptcy. Maybe it was luck. He didn't have to see the family fall apart." That day, Marcus met the children. Emily and Ryan arrived from school with patched but clean uniforms, old but organized backpacks. They were polite and affectionate, especially with their grandfather. Emily, the older one, showed maturity beyond her years. She helped her mother with household chores and looked after her younger brother. Ryan was more reserved, with sad eyes that questioned things his age couldn't comprehend. "Uncle, your dog is big," said Ryan, keeping a respectful distance. "Duke is very gentle. Want to pet him?" With Marcus's guidance, Ryan approached and touched the dog's head. The smile that spread across the child's face deeply moved Marcus. "Does he look like Thunder?" Ryan asked his grandfather. "A little, but Thunder was smaller and had floppy ears." Emily approached too, but maintained a more cautious posture. "Why do you keep coming here?" she asked directly. "Emily," scolded Sarah, who had just arrived from work. "It's all right," said Marcus. "It's a smart question. I come because I enjoy talking with your grandfather about the history of the area where I bought my warehouse." "That place belonged to our family," Emily said with pride. "Yes, your mother told me it must have been an important business. It was the best transport business in the whole city," Ryan declared with childish conviction. Marcus realized the children had absorbed the family pride for the company, even though they were young during its prosperous times. Nostalgia was a common thread uniting 3 generations marked by loss. During the simple but welcoming dinner, Marcus observed the family dynamics. Benjamin tried to keep the children's spirits high. Sarah balanced exhaustion and dedication. The children adapted to their difficult reality with the flexibility of their age. "Uncle Marcus, are you going to open a company like Grandpa's?" asked Ryan. "I'm going to open a mechanics shop. Smaller than your grandfather's business, but I hope it will be successful. When I grow up, I'll work with you," Ryan declared seriously. "And I'll be an accountant like Mom," added Emily. Sarah smiled with tenderness and pride. "You two will study hard and choose whatever you want to be." The conversation revealed the family's dreams and expectations. Even facing hardships, they maintained hope for the future. Marcus felt even more weight in his responsibility to do the right thing with the found money. After dinner, while the children did their homework, Marcus spoke privately with Benjamin and Sarah about practical matters. "How are the family's finances?" Sarah hesitated before answering. "Tight, but we managed to pay the basic bills. Dad works as a night watchman. I do accounting for small businesses. Not much is left over, but we get by." "And plans for the future?" "Surviving one day at a time," Benjamin replied with painful realism. Marcus realized the family had lost the ability to dream big. They lived in the immediate present, without the emotional energy for ambitious plans. Richard's betrayal had stolen not just money, but also hope. "Have you ever thought about restarting the business?" "With what resources?" Sarah asked. "We lost everything. We have no capital, no credit, no collateral to offer." "Besides, trust in the sector was broken," Benjamin added. "The Mitchell name was tarnished by the bankruptcy. No one wants to do business with someone who has a history of default, even if it wasn't our fault." The bitterness was understandable. Marcus knew well the long-term effects of injustice. In the army, he had seen honest soldiers harmed by the mistakes of corrupt superiors. Recovering a reputation was always harder than destroying it. That night, Marcus returned home certain that he needed to act quickly. The Mitchell family lived in a precarious but dignified situation. They deserved to have back what was rightfully theirs. The next day, he sought out the attorney again, this time revealing the real situation. The professional advised him on the legal procedures, warning of potential complications. $76 million is an amount that will attract attention from many interested parties, the attorney explained. Creditors of the bankrupt company, the Internal Revenue Service, even investigations into the origin of the money. You need to be prepared for a long and complex process. Marcus understood the risks, but was determined to follow the right path. How long could the whole process take? Between 1 and 2 years, depending on the complications that arise. And what's the guarantee that the family will get the money in the end? If it's proven that the money belonged to the family business and was hidden illegally, there's a good chance of restitution, but nothing is guaranteed in legal matters. Marcus made the decision to start the process, despite the uncertainties. It was the only way to do the right thing without compromising his own integrity. But fate had prepared a surprise that would completely change the course of the situation. The following week, while working on renovating the warehouse, Marcus received an unexpected visit. A man in a grey suit, with a professional appearance and polite manners, introduced himself as Daniel Carson, a private investigator. "Mr. Marcus Davis, may I speak with you for a few minutes?" "Of course. What do you want?" "I'm investigating irregularities related to the former owner of this property. I'd like to know if you found anything unusual during the renovation." Marcus's heart raced, but he kept his expression neutral. "What kind of irregularities?" "Documents, objects, anything that might have been left by the former tenant." "I haven't found anything special, just common construction debris." Daniel smiled in a way that didn't convey confidence. "I understand. Are you aware that there's an ongoing investigation into funds that disappeared a few years ago?" "I didn't know. What kind of funds?" "Money from the company that operated here, a significant amount that was never located." Marcus feigned surprise. "How much money?" "Several tens of millions." "Enough that several interested parties are still looking for it." The veiled threat was clear. Daniel suspected that Marcus had found something and was testing his reactions. "And what happens if someone finds that money?" "Legally, it should be reported to the authorities. In practice, well, some people prefer to handle these matters more directly." The tension in the air was palpable. Marcus realized he wasn't just dealing with legal issues, but potentially with dangerous people who had an interest in the money. "I understand. If I find anything, I'll contact the proper authorities." "That would be the wisest decision," said Daniel, handing over a card. "Anything comes up, you can contact me first. Sometimes the official route is more complicated than necessary." After Daniel had left, Marcus remained on high alert. The situation had become significantly more complicated. It was no longer just about returning money to the rightful family, but about dealing with people who could be dangerous. Duke, who had remained quiet during the visit, was showing signs of agitation. The dog was sniffing the spot where Daniel had been standing, with his fur bristling and a defensive posture. "You didn't like him either, did you, buddy?" murmured Marcus, petting the animal. That night, Marcus made a decision that would completely change his strategy. Instead of following the lengthy and risky legal process, he decided to find a way to return the money directly to the family, quickly and safely. But first, he needed to understand exactly who Daniel Carson was and what kind of threat he represented. He searched the name online and found limited information. Daniel Carson was listed as a licensed private investigator with a business address in downtown New York City. The references were generic and few. Marcus decided to investigate more deeply. Using contacts from his army days, he obtained more detailed information about Daniel. The man had a questionable background, involved in cases on the borderline between legal and illegal. He wasn't exactly a criminal, but he operated in gray areas of the law. The discovery increased his concern. If Daniel was looking for the money, others probably were too. The situation could become dangerous quickly. Marcus took extra precautions. He installed security cameras in the warehouse, reinforced the locks, and started visiting the place at varying times to detect possible surveillance. During this period of increased caution, he maintained regular contact with the Mitchell family, watching for any changes in their behavior that might indicate external pressure. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out as we're just getting started. Now continuing. On his next visit to the family, Marcus noticed signs of tension that hadn't been there before. Benjamin seemed more nervous, Sarah showed additional worry, and the children were quieter than usual. "Is everything all right?" Marcus asked during a private conversation with Benjamin. "A man showed up here yesterday, asking strange questions about Richard and about company money." Marcus's blood ran cold. "What kind of questions?" "He wanted to know if Richard had left anything stored away, if we knew where he hid valuables, said he represented creditors interested in recovering debts." "And what did you tell him?" "The truth, that Richard took everything when he disappeared, and we were left with nothing." Marcus realized Daniel was pressuring multiple fronts to find the money. The situation was becoming unsustainable. "Did this man leave any contact information?" "Yes, a card. Said he might come back to talk more." Benjamin showed him the card. "It was the same Daniel Carson. You shouldn't speak with him without a lawyer present," Marcus advised. "Why, did we do something wrong?" "You didn't do anything wrong, but people like that can twist any information. It's better to protect yourselves." Sarah, who had been listening to the conversation, approached with a worried expression. "Are you familiar with this type of situation?" Marcus hesitated before answering. It was time to reveal at least part of the truth. "I have experience with people who conduct unofficial investigations. They don't always have good intentions." "What do you think we should do?" "Don't speak with him again. If he returns, tell him you'll consult an attorney before answering any questions." The family agreed with the guidance, but Marcus could sense their growing fear. People who had suffered so much in recent years didn't need more pressure and threats. That night, Marcus made the definitive decision. He couldn't allow the family to continue being tormented over something that was in his hands to resolve. He needed to act quickly before the situation became even more complicated. He devised a risky plan that could resolve everything in a few days. First, he would confront Daniel directly, trying to understand exactly what he wanted and who he worked for. Second, he would find a way to transfer the money to the family without involving prolonged legal issues. The confrontation with Daniel happened 2 days later, at the warehouse itself. Marcus called the number on the card and scheduled a meeting, claiming to have important information. Daniel arrived punctually, accompanied by another man who remained in the car. The presence of the companion confirmed Marcus's suspicions about the questionable nature of the operation. "So, Mr. Marcus, you said you have information for me?" "I do. But first I want to know exactly who you work for. I represent legitimate creditors who lost money in the Mitchell Company bankruptcy." Which specific creditors? That's confidential. The important thing is that there are people interested in recovering funds that disappeared. And what would my involvement be in this? Daniel smiled unpleasantly. Your involvement would be to find and hand over anything that might be hidden on these premises. In return, you'd receive generous compensation. And if I don't find anything? That would be a pity, especially considering that certain people might interpret lack of cooperation as obstruction. The threat was clear. Marcus maintained his calm demeanor, but internally prepared for possible physical confrontation. I understand. And if I were to find something, what would the process be? Simple. You hand it to me. I make the proper distribution. Everyone stays satisfied. Including the Mitchell family? Daniel hesitated for a moment. The family would receive their legally entitled portion. Which would be how much? That would depend on various factors. Marcus realized Daniel had no intention of returning anything to the family. He probably represented people who simply wanted to take possession of the money. I'll think about your proposal, said Marcus. Don't take too long. Patience has limits. After Daniel left, Marcus analyzed his options. It was evident he couldn't trust the investigator, or whoever he represented. He needed a solution that would protect both the family and himself. The answer came through a bold idea. Instead of trying to resolve the situation through third parties, he would confess everything directly to the family and work together with them to find the best solution. The decision to reveal the truth was difficult, but Marcus realized it was the only honest way to proceed. 15 years of military training had taught him that complex situations require direct solutions. The following Thursday, Marcus went to the Mitchell family home with a defined plan. He brought Duke as always, but this time he also carried a briefcase with documents and photographs that proved his discovery. I need to speak with all of you about something very important, said Marcus when Benjamin greeted him. Of course, Sarah is arriving from work. The children are doing homework. We can talk in the living room. When the whole family was gathered, Marcus took a deep breath and began his confession. What I'm about to tell you might sound unbelievable, but it's absolutely true. I found something in the warehouse that belonged to you. What kind of thing? Asked Sarah. Money. A lot of money. Hidden in a false wall. The silence that followed was tense. Benjamin and Sarah exchanged looks of disbelief. How much money? Benjamin finally asked. $76 million. Sarah let out a gasp of surprise. That's impossible. Richard never had access to that much money. From what I've researched, he must have embezzled funds from the company for months, maybe years, before disappearing. Marcus showed the photographs he had taken of the money bundles before hiding them again. Why didn't you keep the money? Emily asked with childlike honesty. Because it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to your family. Benjamin stood up and paced the room, trying to process the information. If this is true, why are you telling us? You could have just kept it all and no one would have known. Because that would be theft, and because you've suffered enough because of Richard's dishonesty. Sarah remained quiet, watching Marcus carefully. Finally, she spoke. How do we know this isn't some kind of scam? You don't. You can only trust my word, just as I'm trusting your honesty. The conversation went on for hours. Marcus explained in detail how he had found the money, his research about the family, and his attempts to find a legal solution. He also told them about the pressure from Daniel Carson and the risks involved. So there are other people looking for this money? Benjamin asked. Yes, and they don't have good intentions. What do you propose we do? That we work together to recover the money safely without involving these dangerous people. Sarah asked the question everyone was thinking. And what would be your share in this? Just the satisfaction of doing the right thing. You can give me some amount if you want, but it's not a condition. The rest of the evening was spent planning how to proceed. They decided that Marcus would retrieve the money from the warehouse and store it in a safer place until they found the best way to legitimize it. But the plan faced its first obstacle when Sarah insisted on seeing the money before fully believing the story. I understand your suspicion, said Marcus. We can go to the warehouse tomorrow night when there's no risk of being observed. The following night, Marcus, Sarah, and Benjamin headed to the warehouse. The children stayed with the neighbor, unaware of the real reason for the adults' outing. In the dark warehouse, lit only by flashlights, Marcus carefully removed the bricks from the wall. When the money bundles appeared, Sarah let out a breath of disbelief. My God, it's really true. Benjamin picked up one of the bundles and examined the bills. They were genuine, old, but in good condition. This is the money Richard stole from us, he said with a choked voice. Sarah was crying silently, touching the bundles as if they were something sacred. 5 years looking for an explanation for his disappearance, 5 years blaming ourselves for not noticing the signs, and all along he had planned all this. The emotion of the moment was intense. 3 people united by a discovery that would change their lives forever. What do we do now? Benjamin asked. First, we take everything from here. This place is no longer safe, Marcus replied. It took them 2 hours to discreetly transport all the bundles to Benjamin's house. The elderly man had a dry basement, where the money would be temporarily hidden. In the following days, the family experienced an emotional roller coaster. The thrill of recovering what had been stolen mingled with the fear of potential complications. Marcus researched ways to legitimize the money without drawing undue attention. He discovered there were legal precedents for similar situations, especially when the origin of the funds could be proven through documents from the bankrupt company. Sarah, with her accounting experience, took on analyzing the company's old records, searching for evidence linking the found sum to Richard's embezzlement. The analysis revealed a clear pattern of irregularities in the company's last 2 years of operation. Fictitious contracts, services not rendered, discrepancies between amounts received and deposited. Richard had systematically diverted funds, preparing his escape with meticulous care. He planned everything in advance, said Sarah, showing the documents to Marcus. It wasn't an impulsive act. It was a calculated, cold theft. The discovery brought more pain to Sarah. It was hard to accept that the man she had been married to, the father of her children, had lied and stolen for years. How did I not notice anything? She constantly asked herself. Richard was smart and knew how to disguise his actions, Marcus replied. People prepared to deceive can keep up appearances for a long time. Benjamin showed a mix of anger and relief. Anger at having been deceived for so long. Relief to know we weren't bad managers. The company went under because it was sabotaged from within. The children sensed the adults' agitation, but didn't fully understand what was happening. Emily, more perceptive, asked questions the adults struggled to answer. Why are you always talking in secrets? She asked one day. We're sorting out work matters, Sarah replied evasively. Matters about Daddy. The direct question caught Sarah off guard. She looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, matters about your father. We've discovered some things about what happened when he left. Is he coming back? Ryan asked hopefully. No, sweetie. Your father isn't coming back, but we found out he left some things that belong to our family. What kind of things? Things that will help us have a better life. The children accepted the vague explanation, but Marcus sensed that sooner or later more complete answers would be necessary. Meanwhile, external pressure mounted. Daniel Carson called Marcus several times, growing increasingly insistent. The calls took on a progressively threatening tone. My patience is wearing thin, Marcus. I hope you have good news for me. I'm still looking. It's a large area. It takes time to check everything. Time is something we don't have much of. I suggest you speed up your search. Marcus knew he couldn't prolong the lie indefinitely. Daniel would eventually grow suspicious or take more direct measures. The solution came through Sarah, who suggested a direct legal approach. What if we report the discovery to the authorities, but with all the documentation proving the money belongs to our family? It's risky, Marcus replied. It could take years to resolve, and there's no guarantee of the outcome. But it's the only way to protect ourselves legally. If Daniel finds out we found the money and didn't report it, we could be accused of tax evasion. Benjamin agreed with his daughter. I'd rather face legal bureaucracy than dangerous people. Marcus understood the logic, but feared the delay of the legal process would allow Daniel and his associates to create bigger problems. The decision was made at a tense family meeting. They would report the discovery through a specialized attorney, presenting all the documentation proving Richard's embezzlement and the family's right to the money. Marcus contacted a different lawyer than the first one he had consulted, explaining the entire situation. The professional attorney William Bradford specialized in asset recovery and had experience with similar cases. "The situation is complex, but you have solid elements," analyzed Attorney Bradford after reviewing all the documentation. "The fact that you uncovered irregularities in the company's records strengthens the case. How long could the process take?" "Between 6 months and 2 years, depending on possible challenges." "And during that time, where does the money stay?" "In a court deposit under the custody of the court. You won't be able to use it, but it will also be protected." The family agreed to the procedure, even knowing it would mean more months of financial difficulties. But Daniel Carson was not willing to wait for legal solutions. 3 days after the family had decided on the legal route, Marcus received an unexpected visit at his home. There were 2 people, Daniel and a younger man with an intimidating appearance. "Marcus, we need to talk," said Daniel without beating around the bush. "About what?" "About your lack of cooperation. My sources inform me that you have been frequently seen at the Mitchell family's house." Marcus remained calm but internally prepared for a possible confrontation. "I am a friend of the family. What's the problem?" "The problem is that I suspect you are plotting something related to the money that should have been found by now." "I don't know what you're talking about." Daniel's companion took a step forward, but Daniel stopped him with a gesture. "Marcus, I'll be direct. I know you found the money, I know it's hidden somewhere, and I know you plan to hand it over to the family instead of the people who really have a right to it." "And who would those people be?" "People who invested a lot of time and resources looking for that money, people who don't like to be deceived." The threat was clear. Marcus realized he needed to act quickly before the situation spiraled completely out of control. "Give me 1 more week," said Marcus. "If there is hidden money, I will find it." 3 days, replied Daniel. "After that, we will consider that you are deliberately obstructing our work." After the men left, Marcus immediately called Attorney Bradford. "We need to speed up the legal process. The situation is getting dangerous. I can file the documentation today, but that won't stop other people from taking parallel actions." "What kind of actions?" "People willing to use illegal methods to recover money usually don't respect judicial processes." Marcus understood that the time had come to take more drastic measures to protect the family. That night, he met with Benjamin and Sarah for a final decision. "We can't wait any longer. You need to leave the city for a few days until the situation normalizes." "We can't just disappear," protested Sarah. "I have clients, work commitments." "And the kids have school," added Benjamin. "I understand, but your safety is more important than anything else." Marcus explained about Daniel's threatening visit and the urgency of protecting the family. "I have a friend who lives in Charlotte. You can stay there for a week while Attorney Bradford formalizes the entire legal process." The family hesitated, but realized that Marcus was genuinely concerned for their safety. "And you?" asked Sarah. "I'll stay here to resolve the situation with Daniel. When you return, everything will be clarified." "We don't want you to take risks for our sake," said Benjamin. "I'm not taking risks, just being cautious." The next morning, Marcus took the family to the bus station. They packed minimal luggage, pretending it was a vacation trip. The children were excited about the unexpected trip, but Emily showed suspicion about the real reasons. "Uncle Marcus, why aren't you coming along?" "I need to take care of my workshop, but I'll visit you soon." "Do you promise?" "I promise." After watching the bus leave, Marcus returned home with a mix of relief and apprehension. He had 3 days to resolve the situation with Daniel before the man completely lost his patience. Attorney William Bradford had filed all the legal documentation the previous day. The process was officially underway, but Marcus knew this wouldn't prevent extra legal actions. On the afternoon of the 2nd day, after the family's departure, Daniel showed up at the warehouse accompanied by 3 men. The situation was clearly escalating into something more serious. "The game's over, Marcus." "Where's the money?" "I haven't found any money." Lies. We know the family disappeared from the city. We know you're hiding something. Marcus maintained his calm posture, but his hands discreetly moved closer to tools that could serve as makeshift weapons. The family traveled to visit relatives. I have nothing to do with it. One of Daniel's men began examining the warehouse walls, looking for signs they had been recently opened. Here, said the man, pointing to the wall where Marcus had found the money. Daniel examined the spot and immediately identified the bricks that had been removed and replaced. Very interesting. It looks like someone's been digging around here. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. I removed some bricks myself to check the wall structure. Renovations. You know how it is. Daniel didn't believe the explanation. Remove the bricks again. I want to see what's behind them. Marcus had no choice. He removed the bricks, revealing the empty cavity. As you can see, there's nothing here. But there was, Daniel said with certainty. The shape of the cavity, the way it was dug out, there was something here and you took it. The tension increased dramatically. Daniel's men positioned themselves strategically, blocking the warehouse exits. I'll ask one last time. Where's the money? Marcus made a decision that would completely change the course of the situation. It's with the authorities. I reported the discovery yesterday following legal protocols. Daniel's face turned red with anger. You did what? I found the money, identified that it belonged to the Mitchell family, and reported it to the proper authorities, all within the law. You idiot! You have no idea what you've just done. I did exactly what any honest citizen should do. Daniel gestured to his men, who approached Marcus with clearly hostile intentions. But before any violence could occur, police car sirens were heard approaching. Marcus smiled for the first time in days. I forgot to mention that I requested police protection after your threats yesterday. 3 state police vehicles surrounded the warehouse. Daniel and his men found themselves cornered, with no possibility of escape. The officer in charge addressed Marcus. Mr. Marcus Davis? I'm Captain Harrison. We received your report about threats and extortion. These men are trying to force me to provide information about an ongoing legal investigation. Daniel tried to argue. We're licensed private investigators. We're just asking questions about a legal case. With 3 armed men? Asked the captain, observing the weapons that had been identified during the approach. Daniel and his associates were arrested for questioning. Marcus gave a detailed statement about all the threats he had received. You're safe now, said the captain. But I recommend you keep in touch with us if there are other intimidation attempts. With Rogerio neutralized, Roberto called the family in Charlotte to give the good news. You can come back. The situation has been resolved. What happened? Asked Sarah. Rogerio was arrested for threats and extortion. He won't bother you anymore. The relief in Sarah's voice was palpable. And the money? It's safe under court custody. Attorney Williams says the legal process is progressing well. 2 days later, the family returned to Richmond. The kids were tanned and excited from the trip, without fully understanding the reasons that had made it necessary. Uncle Marcus, you promised to visit us, reminded Emily, and I'll keep that promise. When everything settles down, we'll take a real trip. In the following weeks, the legal process moved quickly. The documentation presented by Attorney William was solid, and Rogerio's arrest for threats strengthened the family's case. The police investigation into Rogerio revealed that he represented a group of people involved in illegal asset recovery. They weren't exactly criminals, but operated in grey areas using questionable methods. Most importantly was the discovery that Rogerio didn't represent legitimate creditors of the Mitchell Company. He had been hired by people who simply wanted to take the missing money. This strengthens your case even further, explained Attorney William. There are no other parties with legitimate claims to the money. 3 months after the legal process began, came the first official good news. The court preliminarily recognized the Mitchell family's right to the money found, based on evidence that Richard Thompson had embezzled funds from the family business. It's an important step, said Attorney William, but it's not the final decision yet. How much longer? Asked Benjamin. Probably another 3 or 4 months for the definitive decision. During this waiting period, Marcus grew even closer to the family. He helped Sarah get new clients for her accounting business, taught Ryan and Emily about basic mechanics, and became a present father figure in the children's lives. Benjamin, who initially viewed Marcus with natural suspicion, came to consider him as a son. "You gave us back more than money," he said one day to the former soldier. "You gave us back our hope. I didn't do anything special, just did what was right. Many people wouldn't." The relationship between Marcus and Sarah also evolved naturally. Initially based on mutual trust regarding the money issue, it gradually developed into genuine friendship and eventually into something deeper. "You changed our lives," Sarah said one evening, as they talked in Benjamin's backyard. "You changed mine, too. Before meeting you, I lived only for myself. Now I have a family." "Is that how you see us? As family?" "If you'll have me, yes." Sarah smiled with tears in her eyes. "Of course we will. The kids already consider you an uncle. Dad talks about you as if you were his son. And you? How do you see me?" "As the honest man who gave us back not just our money, but our faith in people." The relationship between them developed slowly, respectfully, always considering the children's well-being and Benjamin's feelings. Ryan and Emily accepted Marcus naturally. To them, he was simply Uncle Marcus who had appeared in their lives and made everything better. "Is Uncle Marcus going to live with us?" Ryan asked one day. "Would you like that?" asked Sarah. "Yes. He can teach me how to fix cars." "And teach me about dogs," added Emily. Duke had become the family's unofficial mascot, spending more time at Benjamin's house than at Marcus's apartment. 5 months after the legal process began, the court's final decision came. The money was officially returned to the Mitchell family, with only legal fees and court costs deducted. The net amount the family received was $73 million. "I can't believe this is real," said Sarah, holding the official document. "It is real," replied attorney William Bradford. "You are officially rich again." The family's first reaction was disbelief, followed by euphoria, and finally a gradual understanding of how their lives would change. "What do we do now?" asked Benjamin. "First we celebrate," said Marcus. "Then we plan the future." The celebration was simple but meaningful. Gathered in the same room where Marcus had confessed his discovery months before, the family toasted with soda and gave thanks for the entire journey that had brought them to that moment. "I want to make a proposal," said Marcus. "How about we restart the logistics company? With adequate capital and honest management, it can become the success it once was." "Would you run the company?" asked Sarah. "We would run it. You would handle the financial side, I would handle operations. Benjamin would be a special consultant, and the children would have a secure future." The proposal excited the whole family. It was a way to honor the positive legacy of the original company, eliminating the negative marks left by Richard. "What would we call the new company?" asked Emily. "Mitchell and Davis Logistics," suggested Ryan. "I like the idea," said Benjamin with a smile. In the following months, they worked on rebuilding the company. With sufficient capital, they managed to acquire modern equipment, hire qualified staff, and establish solid contracts. Marcus brought his military logistics experience to the civilian company, creating efficient and secure systems. Sarah applied her accounting experience to ensure total transparency in all operations. The company grew quickly, but in a controlled and sustainable way. Within a year, it already employed 40 people and operated a fleet of 15 trucks. Most important was the social impact of the company's success. Marcus and Sarah decided that a percentage of the profits would go to community projects, especially educational programs for employees' children. "We want other families to have the opportunities our children will have," explained Sarah. 2 years after the money was discovered, Marcus and Sarah married in a simple but moving ceremony. Benjamin walked Sarah down the aisle. The children were Ring Bearer and Flower Girl, and Duke was officially named Best Dog. "Would you accept being my official grandfather?" Marcus asked Benjamin the day before the wedding. "It would be an honor," replied the elderly man with tears in his eyes. The wedding symbolized not only the union between Marcus and Sarah, but the formalization of a family that had been born from the most unlikely circumstances. Richard Thompson was never found. Occasionally there were rumors about his presence in other countries, but nothing concrete. For the family, he became a closed chapter of the past. "Sometimes I wonder if he knows what happened," Sarah said once. "He probably does," replied Marcus, "but it doesn't matter anymore. He chose his path, we chose ours." Ryan and Emily grew up in an environment of stability and love that contrasted dramatically with the early years after their father's abandonment. They vaguely remembered the hard times, but their predominant memories were of happy moments with Marcus and the family's prosperity. "Uncle Marcus, did you always know everything would work out?" asked Emily, now 12 years old. "Not always. There were times I was very afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of not being able to do the right thing. Of not being able to protect you." "But you did." "We did it. All of us, working together." Benjamin, at 77 years old, had found a new purpose in life as a company consultant and proud grandfather of 5 grandchildren, Ryan, Emily, and 3 children that Marcus and Sarah had after their marriage. "I never imagined I'd live long enough to see the company reborn," he said at a family meeting. "And not just reborn, but surpass everything it was before," added Marcus. The new Mitchell & Davis Logistics had become a benchmark for responsible logistics in the state of Virginia. It had won awards for ethical business practices, social responsibility, and technological innovation. Duke, now 12 years old, lived comfortably retired, being lovingly cared for by the children. He occasionally still showed interest in walls that might hide secrets, but his main occupation was supervising the play of Marcus's adopted grandchildren. Without Duke, none of this would have happened, Marcus often reminded the family. "He was our 4-legged guardian angel," Sarah agreed. The story of the discovery had become a local legend. Journalists occasionally approached the family for stories about honesty and second chances, but they preferred to keep the details discreet. "What matters isn't what we found, but what we did with what we found," was Marcus's standard response to prying questions. 5 years after the marriage, Marcus and Sarah decided to expand their social projects. They created a foundation focused on helping families destroyed by abandonment or financial betrayal. "We want others to have the chance to start over that we had," Sarah explained at the foundation's launch. The Mitchell Davis Foundation for Family Reconstruction helped with legal counseling, psychological support, professional training, and when necessary, direct financial assistance. "Every family we manage to help honors the memory of the suffering we went through," Marcus said in the talks he gave on business ethics. Ryan, now 15, had chosen to pursue a career in mechanical engineering, inspired by Marcus's stories about his time in the United States Army and the practical teachings received in the workshop. "I want to design vehicles that make transportation safer and more efficient," he declared with typical teenage determination. Emily, at 17, combined her mother's analytical intelligence with Marcus's practical determination. She planned to study business administration to eventually take over the leadership of the family company. "I want to continue the work you started, but also take the company into the international market," she announced at a family meeting. Benjamin, at 80 years old, maintained surprising energy. Besides his role in the company, he had become a volunteer mentor for other seniors facing financial difficulties. "Experience is meant to help others going through the same problems," he explained his motivation. Marcus often reflected on how a simple decision to buy a rundown warehouse had changed so many lives. If he had chosen another location for his workshop, if Duke hadn't sniffed the wall, if he had decided to keep the money. "Do you believe in fate?" he asked Sarah one evening, while they watched the children playing in the backyard. "I believe some people are placed in our lives at the right time," she replied, "even when we don't realize it at the time. Especially when we don't realize it at the time." The company continued to grow sustainably. 10 years after its re-establishment, it operated in 3 states and employed more than 200 people. All employees received profit sharing and had access to education programs for their children. "We never want anyone in our company to go through the hardships we went through," was the philosophy guiding all decisions. Marcus maintained his original auto repair shop in the warehouse where it all began, but now as a hobby and training center, for young people interested in mechanics. "This place has special meaning," he explained to visitors. "This is where our family truly began." A discreet plaque on the warehouse wall honored Duke, identified as the city's best four-legged investigator. The dog had passed away peacefully at 15, surrounded by the entire family he had helped form. "Duke taught us that loyalty and persistence can change lives," said Marcus at the small family funeral. "And that the greatest treasures are the relationships we build," added Sarah. The children planted a tree in the backyard in memory of Duke, with a plaque that read, "Duke, four-legged hero who found our family." Ryan pursued his engineering dream, specializing in sustainable transport vehicle design. His first project would be implemented by the family's own company. Emily studied business administration and earned a master's degree in corporate social responsibility. At 25, she became the company's vice president, bringing innovative ideas about responsible expansion. "I want our company to be a global model for ethical business," she declared in her first executive meeting. Benjamin remained active in the company until 85, when he decided to officially retire to dedicate himself completely to family. "I worked my whole life to leave a legacy for my descendants," he said at the retirement party. "I never imagined that legacy would be so much greater and better than I dreamed." Marcus, at 55, was regionally recognized as an ethical businessman and philanthropist. He received several honors for his social work, but always credited his success to the family he had adopted. "A man alone builds nothing lasting," he said in his speeches. "United families build empires." Sarah became a reference in transparent financial management. She wrote a book about business reconstruction after family trauma, donating all royalties to the foundation they had created. "I want other women to know it's possible to start over after betrayal," she explained her motivations. The Mitchell Davis Foundation had already helped over 1,000 families rebuild their lives after situations similar to what they had faced. 15 years after discovering the money, the family gathered in the same warehouse for a special celebration. It was the anniversary of the date Marcus had found the hidden treasure. "We're not celebrating the money we found," Marcus told the 3 generations present. "We're celebrating the family we found." "And the family we built," added Sarah. "And the future we'll build together," completed Emily. Ryan, now married with 2 young children, looked at the wall where Duke had made the initial discovery. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Uncle Marcus had decided to keep the money," he said. "Probably none of this would exist," replied Benjamin. "Honesty is the foundation of any lasting construction. The family's new generation grew up hearing stories about how a curious dog and an honest soldier had changed all their destinies." "Grandpa Benjamin, tell the Duke story again," the great-grandchildren would ask. "Once upon a time there was a very clever dog who knew how to find treasures. The story always ended with the same lesson. The greatest treasures aren't made of money, but of love, honesty, and family." Marcus watched the children listen to the story he had lived. Sometimes he still wondered if he had made the right decisions, if he had acted in the best possible way. "Do you have any regrets?" asked Sarah, noticing his thoughtful expression. "No regrets. Only gratitude." "Gratitude for what?" "For Duke finding not just the money, but you all. For having the chance to do the right thing. For discovering that family isn't about blood, but about choices. And for giving us the opportunity to start over. We started over together. That's the most important part." The sun was setting over the warehouse where it all began. The company Mitchell and Davis Logistics continued to grow. The foundation kept helping families. The children kept growing up in an environment of love and stability. And somewhere, Marcus was sure, Duke was still watching over the family he had helped find. The story that had started with a lonely man and his dog had turned into a multi-generational saga, united by love, honesty, and determination. 20 years after the initial discovery, Ryan took over as president of the company. Emily became director of international expansion, and the younger children of Marcus and Sarah began showing interest in the family business. Each generation has the responsibility to improve upon what they received from the previous one, Marcus taught his grandchildren. "And to never forget the values that brought us here," Sarah added. Benjamin, at 90 years old, had become the respected patriarch of a family that now included dozens of people connected by blood and choice. "When I was young, I thought success was having money," he told his great-grandchildren. "Now I know that success is having a family that loves us and values that guide us." The company had expanded internationally, always maintaining the ethical principles that had been its foundation. In every new market, they allocated a percentage of profits to local social projects. "Wherever we go, we want to leave the place better than we found it," was the motto guiding the expansion. Marcus, at 60, had passed executive leadership to his children, but remained active as a mentor and consultant. "My role now is to ensure we never lose sight of our core values." He explained his new position. The family's story had become a case study in business schools, an example of how crises can turn into opportunities when faced with honesty and unity. "What I admire most about your story," said a professor who came to interview the family, "is how you turned a betrayal into a blessing." "It wasn't the betrayal that was the blessing," Marcus corrected. "It was the decision to do the right thing, even when it was hard." "And the decision not to let bitterness define our future," Sarah added. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story. Where are you listening from? If this story touched your heart, leave a sincere comment telling us. Do you believe Marcus made the right decision by returning the money? We love reading your opinions. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories we'll share.